My child went missing and came back different. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to go online and ask strangers for advice. I write an advice column, after all. That's what I do. Give answers, find clarity in messes, offer comfort with the right words at the right time. I've responded to letters about cheating husbands, haunted houses, lost pets, and everything in between. I've always known how to sound like I had it all figured out. But now I'm writing to the void because I don't know who else to turn to. Because something happened. Something that started out tragic and became something else entirely. It began at the park. That's how innocent it all was. A playgroup. Just moms and kids. The same as always. The same slides. The same tiny climbing structure. The same patch of woods everyone always said wasn't deep enough to get lost in. We'd been going there for 5 years. I knew every creak of the swing chains, every scuffed patch of wood chips. My son, he's 8, or at least he was 8, was playing hide and seek. He was clever, too clever, always finding the perfect hiding spot. He used to giggle when the other kids gave up. Someone once joked he'd grow up to be either a genius or a criminal mastermind. I laughed. Back then, everything was a joke. When the other kids started calling for him, "Come out! You won! Game's over!" I didn't panic at first. It was just part of the game. But after 5 minutes, 10, the mood shifted. The laughter died. Something ancient stirred in my gut. A primal panic. That slow, creeping dread that builds with every unanswered call. I don't remember most of what happened next in order. I remember my phone slipping out of my shaking hand while trying to call 911. I remember my knees hitting the ground. The ranger's expression when he said, "No sign of a struggle." Like that was supposed to be comforting. There was no trail, no torn clothes, no footprints, nothing. Just vanished, like the forest had swallowed him whole. The search lasted 2 weeks, 14 days of helicopters, bloodhounds, and whispered suspicions behind cupped hands. 14 nights where I screamed myself awake from dreams of finding him, bloody, cold, lifeless. 14 sunrises, I stood at the threshold of his room, hoping he'd be there again, curled under his dinosaur sheets, like this was just a long, cruel nightmare. Then, on the 15th day, I got a phone call at 3:12 a.m. They found him, walking alone on a logging road 6 miles from the park. Cold, disoriented, alive, I collapsed at the station. The weight of it all left me boneless. I ran to him. I remember throwing my arms around him, holding him so tight I felt his ribs shift. He let me hold him, but he didn't hold me back. The officer told me it was shock. He'd been through something. It would take time. I believed that. I wanted to believe that. That first night home, I didn't let him out of my sight. He slept in my bed, curled beside me. I lay awake and watched him breathe. Every inhale, every exhale was sacred. I whispered, "I'll never let you go again." I meant it. Then, but over the next few days, I started noticing things. Little things. Harmless things. I told myself. He didn't seem to remember where he'd been. That's normal, they said. Trauma. Suppression. Amnesia. But it wasn't just that he couldn't remember. It was like he didn't understand what remembering was. He looked confused when I asked questions. Not scared. Not defensive. Just blank. He started walking differently, a half second behind, like he was copying someone else's movements. He had to be coaxed into the shower, and only if he could leave his underwear on. He didn't seem to understand clothing anymore. One day, he wore his socks over his shoes. He hums now, all the time. Not songs, just these low, disjointed, tuneless notes. It's constant, especially when he thinks I'm not listening. And the way he says, "Mom," it sounds right, but it feels wrong. Like when a stranger knows your name, or when someone says, "I love you," but they don't mean it. A week later, I woke up to find him standing in the hallway, motionless, just standing there, staring at the wall. When I asked what he was doing, he said, "Making sure no one's here." I laughed. I don't know why. It wasn't funny. I told his therapist. Carefully, I said he seemed different, that maybe the trauma changed him. She nodded. Kids process trauma in unusual ways. I nodded too. Then I went home and locked my bedroom door for the first time in my life. More things changed. He eats less, sleeps less. I think he even blinks less. I started watching him more closely, obsessively. I checked him for marks, scars, something that could explain it. But everything looked right. Same freckle behind his ear, same chipped front tooth, same scar on his elbow from when he fell off his bike. And yet, one night, I caught him talking to someone in his room. I pressed my ear to the door. He was whispering, "There are too many now. We need another." Silence. Then, faintly, "She'll do." I burst into the room. He turned, calm as ever, smiled like nothing was wrong. There was no phone, no walkie-talkie, just him, sitting cross-legged on the floor. I asked who he was talking to. He said, "The boy in the woods." I took him back to the therapist. I begged. They called in a specialist. She asked him questions. He answered them all, politely, softly, like a little gentleman. Then she asked, "What's your happiest memory?" He paused, looked up at the ceiling. Then he smiled. When I stopped being hungry, she froze, asked what he meant. "I used to be very hungry," he said, "but now I'm not. Now I'm full." That was the last time she saw him. She quit 2 days later, sent me an email that just said, "I don't think that's your son." Now I sleep with a knife under my pillow. I still make him lunch. I still drive him to school. I still say, "I love you," hoping maybe if I say it enough, whatever he is, will say it back and mean it. But I know that's not my son, and I don't think I'm the only one, because just last night I saw a post online from another mother in another state telling the same story. 8-year-old boy vanished at a park, came back different. Her son hums too. Was 3 years ago, right before the pandemic hit. And now, one of my favorite stories to tell. Now that I'm no longer scared, I've moved 1,000 miles away. In a few years' time has passed, so my husband was in the military during this time, and I was a housewife due to work being hard for me to get in my area that I was in, as I can't drive, and lived off base. Well, any military person knows that a military schedule is pretty darn predictable, and much of our lives ran on an easy-to-memorize routine. And to make matters worse, my husband was often gone for long hours for about 2 to 3 months. I had been seeing this guy wandering around my home, peeking in windows. Honestly, I didn't originally think much of it. Beyond being weirded out, we didn't have anything that would interest a robber. No TV, a single 7-year-old computer, a broken couch and table, and a mattress on the floor. Literally nothing expensive in our home, beyond a gun that was locked up in a safe that might have looked like it had valuables, but that's a lot of work for what looked like a home of people living in Pody. So I didn't think anything of it yet. He kept coming back when my husband was gone. I'd seen him every few days, or hear him due to my normally super sweet cat at the time, hating him, hissing and yelling when he saw him, so I'd know that he was there, when I'd hear my cat making an angry fuss. One day I went out with my husband, and I guess I didn't lock the door properly or something, as our lock could be a bit finicky, and I was running late. According to our normal schedule, I would have gone to base with my husband for a family mandatory fun event and came back home alone and an Uber while my husband stayed at the base to work or hang out with his friends. And what ended up happening was that I fell sick with a migraine. I have hemiplegic migraine, so it can actually be pretty serious, and his sergeant told him to take me home and take care of me when he saw me. Not before I go on, I should probably describe my old home. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment complex in the mountains. It was a massive complex. My home layout was this: my front door led to my kitchen and dining area, and the wall next to my door had another glass door, I think a patio, and across from my kitchen was my room. Then you go down the hall and hit the living room, which had another glass door wall next to the fireplace. And finally after that, you go across the living room at the end of the hall and reach our guest room, or my plant room, cats, playroom, SLG guest room, which had yet another glass door. I was literally surrounded by giant glass doors. And outside we had a porch, and on the porch was a storage closet where I usually kept my bike, since I couldn't drive due to my migraines and seizures now. Back to the story, now that I've set the scene. When my husband brought me home again, not per our normal schedule, we arrived to find our door slightly ajar. We gave each other a look and went inside anyway, with me mumbling that I must not have locked it properly due to being in a rush that morning. We walked into the kitchen, where my husband immediately went to the fridge, looking around for water for himself and me. He then spoke for the first time in the fridge. Honestly, I don't even remember what he said, but a few seconds after he spoke, we heard something our porch glass door at the back of our home moved, and we both knew that sound really well, since I like to sit in the porch, reading for hours, so I was always coming in and out. He grabbed my shoulder and whispered for me to grab his gun from our room. He then grabbed a knife and went toward the living room. I went and grabbed the gun, noticing on my way into our room that our living room glass porch door was wide open, and upon giving my husband the gun and following behind him, I dialed 911 in my panic, saying I had an active break-in while my husband did a sweep of our home. I walked back down the hall toward the kitchen to see if the intruder had gone around the back to the front, the only way out of the area he went. We lived on a literal mountainside, and one side was blocked off out back. I was a freshman in high school. I'm currently a senior. My freshman year, I moved schools and started hanging out with a new friend group. 2 friends from that group already lived in my neighborhood, so we usually all just hang out at my house. Whenever we decided to go to my other friend's house, we'd usually just walk, since it was close. Those friends were just renting their house at the time, so eventually they sold it and bought a house in the same neighborhood. When they moved in, we started hanging out there a lot, since they had a huge garage in their backyard where we could chill without being bothered too much. And we eventually got tired of walking all the way over there, since it was on the complete opposite side of the neighborhood. And since we couldn't drive, we started taking a shortcut. There was a path through someone's lawn on my side of the neighborhood, so we started cutting through their yard. During the day, my friend said that at one point they talked to the owners while they were outside, and they said they didn't mind us walking through their yard as long as we didn't wake them up. They even turned off their motion sensor lights so we could cut through at night without causing commotion, and all was well for a couple of weeks, and until we noticed that the man in the house across the street would always be outside with a cigarette, taking pictures of us when we walked up the road. And this went on for a good year or two. We told my parents, but just tried to ignore it altogether, since it creeped us out. And the creepiest part was that no matter what time we went through, he was always out there watching and snapping pictures of us. It didn't matter if it was 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. He was always lurking in the shadows of his porch, with that cigarette ready to snap a picture. Now fast forward to my junior year. My friend was house sitting for his parents while we were on vacation. We were all staying over there and decided to run over to my house for food. And on the way over, I spotted the cigarette and pointed it out to my friend. Mind you, it was 2:30 a.m. and we could feel this dude staring at us. We started to crab bricks and walked faster and faster until we got off that road. When we got back to my house, we both felt really uneasy, so we grabbed a couple of knives and a can of mace before heading back with snacks. I also decided to grab flashlights since it was especially dark that night. And as soon as we got close to the house again, I got that same eerie feeling. I saw what looked like a person crouch behind a bush in the front yard. I lit the bush up with my flashlight and immediately saw a shadow darting back behind a tree. We started walking fast after and kept looking back every few seconds, and that's when I saw a silhouette of legs standing perfectly still on the other side of the camper in their driveway. I absolutely pooped my pants and sprinted through the shortcut into my friend's back door. I don't know what this guy's intentions are, but they definitely don't seem good. And even now, whenever we walk through there, he's always outside watching. And since then, one very strange thing has happened. I don't know if it was the same guy die, but it very well could have been. One night, we were walking my friend home in my neighborhood and decided to take the long way back to my house to avoid that creepy guy again. We dropped him off and all was well until we started walking back. It was me and 3 other friends. We were almost at the end of the road near the stop sign when a white truck flew up to us, rolled down the window, and started barking questions at us. I tried to remain calm and ask him if there was some problem. He said that someone in a blue hoodie had walked onto his back porch and was banging on the glass door. One of my friends was wearing a white hoodie, by the way. But still, this guy started accusing him of doing it, even though we hadn't gone on anyone's porch at all. He demanded our names, so I just gave him my first name and nothing else. The entire time he had his hand on his hip, looking like he was about to burst a blood vessel in his head. He was so angry, we told him that we were in the complete opposite side of the neighborhood when it happened. But he didn't buy it, and he got angry and just screamed at us. "Don't you boys know it's dangerous to be out here at this time?" And I just said, "Now I do," and he pretended to drive off. But as we started walking back, he began following us in his car. For the entire 20-minute walk back, this creepy weirdo trailed us about 100 feet behind in his truck, matching our pace, and he followed us down 3 turns, all the way to my house, and the moment he saw us go inside, he speeds off. I didn't wake my parents, which was stupid, and in hindsight, I definitely should have. So they could have gone outside and asked this weirdo what in God's name he was doing, harassing us alone at 2 a.m. and stalking us back to my house. I don't know if it was the same guy since he claimed his house was in a different side of the neighborhood, But he could have been lying. Anyone unhinged enough to follow some kid's home like that can't be taken seriously. I think the hide behind is real. I just don't think it's what we thought. They say the hide behind lives in the deep places of the forest, where light hesitates and the trees crowd so close their branches knit the sky shut. No one really knows what it looks like, because anyone who glimpses it never lives to speak. It moves soundlessly, just beyond the edges of vision. It follows from behind, always watching. Old woodsmen whispered that it feasted on fear itself, a creature that didn't merely kill you, but hollowed you out from the inside until your mind was just another branch to be snapped off the tree. I grew up scoffing at those stories, superstitions to scare children around campfires, until 2 weeks ago, when I inherited my grandfather's land in the northern Maine woods, and realized that some legends are born from truths too terrible to face. The truck's headlights cut a narrow beam through the pre-dawn fog as I rolled onto the overgrown logging road that led to Grandpa's property. He'd passed last fall, and the land, 400 acres of tangled pines and spruces, had fallen to me by default. I'd always dreaded I'd end up with it, a worthless patch of woods, untouched since Prohibition, where no sane soul ventured after dark. That morning, the air tasted of damp moss and decay. I hopped out, boots sinking into spongy undergrowth. In the weak glow of my headlamp, I surveyed the clearing where Grandpa's old cabin had stood, until a storm 2 years ago snapped its roof off like a matchstick. Now, only weeds and rotting floorboards remained. I hefted my gear: a chainsaw, an axe, marking flags, and a road map scrawled with half-melted notes Grandpa had left in a drawer. He'd written little about this place, just plots, trails, and the warning: stay on the high ground, never follow the echo. I shrugged it off as Grandpa's eccentricity. After all, echoes don't come in forests. As I stepped into the trees, the world contracted to the circle of my beam. 1,000 pine needles whispered overhead, yet I could feel the silence hugging me, pressing close. An hour in, the work began smoothly. I cleared fallen limbs, stacked logs, planning a rough path through the glade. But every time I turned my back for a moment, something would shift. My orange tape markers vanished. A fallen branch I'd snapped in half, whole again, as if nothing had touched it. I'd stop, listening, and hear nothing but the silence. No birds, no rustle of small creatures. The forest held its breath as I worked. Then came the glimpses. Out of the corner of my eye, something flickering, darker than shadow, darting between trunks. Too tall to be a deer, too slender for a bear, always just out of focus. When I spun around, nothing remained but moss and gloom. By noon, my stomach knotted. I'd dropped my wrench against a stump, and when I turned, it was gone. I hunted within a 3-meter radius. Nothing. No footprints in the damp forest floor. No sign the tool had been anywhere but exactly where I left it. A sudden gust of wind rattled the pines. I gripped my headlamp tighter. The high notes of the branches sounded almost wrong, like a warning cry. I shook my head and pressed on, aware that the forest felt less like home and more like an organism watching my every move. Late afternoon light slanted low when I reached a hollow I'd never noticed. There, half hidden by leaning black pines, sat a shack. Its wood boards were bleached to ash. Windows yawned empty, and the door hung loose on its hinges. No chimney, no sign on any map. Nothing but rot and stillness. I hesitated at the threshold. My tools, My map, all my plans, felt trivial next to this thing. A dare welled in my chest. Go on, step inside. I unsnapped my belt holster, let the radio clatter to the floor. Only the hush answered. Inside, the air was colder than outside. Swirls of dust motes drifted in feeble shafts of dying sunlight. At the center lay a mound of bones, twisted, broken, some human, some animal, fused into a grotesque puzzle under a thin layer of mold. The walls bore carvings, hundreds of gouged symbols, not words, but eye shapes, dull hollows that seemed to follow me, perched above splintered boards, like vultures waiting for carrion. I felt my pulse hammer, checked my phone, no signal. On a rickety table in the corner lay a leather-bound journal, half covered in pine needles. I flipped it open. The entries were Grandpa's handwriting, neat at first, then scrawling madly. June 3rd. Footprints appear at dawn, small, slanted. Behavior is odd. The trees, they lean. June 10th. Voices in the walls. Mother thinks I've lost it. June 12th. I saw it. Tall, jointed limbs. No face. Just skin drawn tight. It breathes the dark. My throat went dry. I stuffed the journal into my pack and backed out of the shack. A low creak made me whirl, but the door had swung closed on its own. The sun was a bleeding orb on the horizon when I sprinted to my truck. Behind me, the forest sighed like a dozen lungs. I dared not look back, but every few steps I felt the air grow colder, as though something exhaled just behind me. I slammed inside, locked the doors. The world beyond the windshield shimmered in the dying light. Trees danced at the corner of vision. I fumbled the keys and peeled out, tires spinning on gravel. That night, in a motel just off Route 1, sleep was a twisted labyrinth. Waking bursts of panic. Imagine footsteps on the vinyl floor, shadow figures pressed against the window. In the mirror across the room, I thought I saw a tall shape leaning in, watching. I blinked. It was gone. At dawn, I thought, it's over. I tell myself those stories were real, but maybe they've stayed behind in the forest. Back in my own house, the hide behind did not release me. Doors I'd locked creaked open in the night. Objects moved, 1 minute on the mantel, the next in the hallway. My phone buzzed with static, slicing at my nerves. In the bathroom, I stared into the mirror. My reflection seemed delayed, like a broken video feed. I snapped my fingers and watched the mirror still. A figure crouched behind me, slender limbs splayed, ribs paling under the skin. I whirled, but nothing stood there. Lights flickered. The thermostat climbed past 70. I knew I should leave, drive away. But something in me rooted me like the trees of that forest, immobile. By the third day, I was skittering at shadows. I woke to hear breathing through the vent above my bed. Low, wet rasping, like lungs learning to imitate human sound. I lay frozen, sweating in the dark, until I realized the breathing was echoing my own heartbeat. The journal pages had begun to slip from my mind like soggy paper. In my own handwriting, I found scrawled notes. It's here. It knows I know. But I couldn't remember writing them. My phone filled with photos I didn't take. Each one showed my living room, but with something bent and crouching where light shouldn't reach. I'd swipe the screen to enlarge, only to see empty rooms. I could no longer trust sight, sound, or memory. Clocks ran backward. Hallways stretched impossibly long. The floor dipped beneath my feet, as though the house itself were breathing. Neighbors knocked, and I didn't answer. Emails piled up, unanswered. Once a delivery man left a package at my door. I opened it to find a single carved eye made of bone. I screamed, but the walls drank the sound. The only solution left was destruction. If the hide behind was tied to places, trees, boards, walls, I would burn it out. In the dead of night, I poured gasoline through every crack of my house. My hands shook so violently, I doused the driveway too. I stood at the front, lighter in hand, and the forest beyond the clearing pressed in, shadow shifting like hungry mouths. I clicked the lighter. The flame guttered, then roared. A line of fire bloomed across the floorboards. Flames licked the walls, crackling with fury. The house became a living thing, screaming in heat and smoke. Outside, I barely register the shriek. Many shrieks, like human voices torn through fire. I tripped over my own feet and staggered toward the truck. Through the orange haze, I thought I saw shapes, tall and twisted, crawling within the walls of flame. They writhed against the heat, pressing like insects in a magnifying glass. Their eyeless faces turned toward me in silent accusation. I drove away as the roof collapsed in a thunder of burning timber. The woods behind me glowed red, sparks dancing into the moonlit sky. I parked by the roadside under a flickering street lamp. For a moment, I believed the fire had purged the evil, but the light buzzed sickly, dipping in brightness. The breathing returned, subtler now, but everywhere, beneath the truck seat, in the rustle of plastic bags in the bed, in the engine's idling pulse. I peered out the windshield. Standing at the edge of the tree line, as still as a gravestone, was a tall shape. No face, skin drawn tight over empty sockets. It cocked its head, as though curious. Then it strode forward, limbs bending at impossible angles, into the ring of streetlight. I ducked. My heart thundered. In the rearview mirror, I caught its reflection, and it smiled with teeth too many to be human.